Good morning. It is excellent to see each of you this morning. Glad that you are here. We do have a number who are visiting with us, and we are glad that you are here. If you have not already taken the opportunity, perhaps you came in after the announcements were made this morning. If you are visiting with us, please take a card on the back of the pew in front of you. Fill that out, and then you can hand that to Jennifer or myself on your way out of the building this morning. That way we can have a record of your attendance with us this morning. We do unfortunately have a number who are not feeling well, and so we need to keep those individuals in prayer. We certainly need to take Rick and keep Rick in our prayers, especially at this time. And so glad Robin is here with us this morning, but want to keep Rick in our prayers. I got a email from Deji this morning. She probably sent it last night, but that's when I got it. It was this morning when I opened my email this morning. And so she said that she made it there to India just fine and everything is going well. And she actually said that her mother is actually doing a little bit better than she expected. And so that is a good thing. And she wanted me to relay the fact that she wants everyone to keep her in prayers as she is there and has a safe journey coming back home again as well. The past couple of Lord's Days then, we have been noticing and considering Christian apologetics. That is, we are considering ways to prove the existence of God. One of the ways then that we noted that was the law of causality, the law of cause and effect. Since the universe exists, there must have been something greater than the universe to cause it to come into existence. And so, if we have something that exists, we have to have something, an effect. We have to have something that is equal to or greater than that effect to be the cause. And so, there is not an adequate cause in the natural realm for this universe to exist. And yet when we have the God of heaven, one who is eternal in the heavens, He has the ability outside all physical laws to cause the universe to exist. Then, last week, we mentioned the teleological argument. This is an argument of design. Since we see design in nature, yea, there's design in the universe, there's design in this world. Our very physical bodies are well designed to operate, to function in our environment. If we see design, then there must be a designer. If there is a watch, there must be a watchmaker, even though we've never seen it. Since we have a great design in the natural world, in this universe, there must be someone that designed those things. The God of heaven designed them. This morning, we want to talk about the argument of morality. The argument of morality. If you have a bulletin there on the back of the bulletin, you can follow along with our sermon, fill in the blanks there of our points, and then maybe even make some notes if you would like to do that this morning. One thing about when these particular sermons, and I certainly appreciate the fact that they are very helpful, I'm glad that they are, but I really want you to think about these sermons as more of a launching pad instead of, some place to rest upon. We don't want that. Because these ideas that I'm putting forth are said in such a brief way that there's a lot more information out there. And technically, from a debate standpoint, listen to me, from a debate standpoint, there are all kind of holes in these sermons. Did you understand what I'm saying? In other words, I cannot fully expound upon every particular area. That's not the design of any sermon, really. The design of a sermon, especially in this way, is that we take this information and we get even more information. But these things are given so that we can have a greater understanding of at least this is what the subject is all about. The moral argument. When I say the name Adolf Hitler, what comes to your mind? Do you think good, fuzzy, wonderful thoughts? Is that someone that you or anyone that you really know or would like to know would aspire to be? If I said Joseph Stalin, would you have similar thoughts and ideas? If I said Saddam Hussein, does the idea of righteousness, goodness, do those adjectives come to your mind when I say that particular name? No. Why not? Did you think about evil, wickedness, unrighteousness, horror? What about those words? Are those more apt descriptions of those individuals? I believe we all know the answer to that question. Here's the thing. If we can ascribe that those individuals that took power and then abused that particular power to the destruction of millions, not just one or two even, not just a rival. That's not what we're even talking about here, though that might be wrong in and of itself. But these individuals murdered millions of people unrighteously. That being said, why are they evil? You see, if there is no God, then those individuals did not do anything wrong. They should never have been held to any account if there is no God. Because you see, after World War II, there were the Nuremberg trials. And those trials were the post-war trials. And of course, the generals, Adolf Hitler, of course, having taken his own life, those generals were put up and tried for war crimes, saying that, of course, their defense was it was well within German law. But the judges came back with, yes, but there is a higher law. A higher law? Yes, there is a higher law. To which law did they appeal? They actually appealed to the higher law of God's Word. That there is a moral, objective moral law that all human beings need to adhere. Here, our first point, let's notice, who then gives that higher moral law? And I think when we go back to the Ten Commandments specifically and look at the moral law that is found within those Ten Commandments. Now, I understand number 4, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. That's not a moral law. I understand that. But by and large, most of the laws are. They deal with morality. And so as we go, and we're not going to read all of the Ten Commandments here, but note that the very first 2 passages, the first 2 commandments are dealing with things that are false. God says, look, don't bow down to wood and to stone and to the air. Don't do that. They're not going to be able to help you. There's no power in them. That's what he's saying by those first 2 laws, those first 2 commandments. Worship me. I'm real. I exist. And that ultimately is where we have to begin. That's why he begins where he does. Because if there is no God, then the rest of it doesn't even matter, does it? But because there is a God, what then should we be concerned about? Go down to verse 12, Exodus chapter 20. I want you to honor your father and your mother. Would most people say that it is evil to be disrespectful to others, especially to your parents? I think most cultures, matter of fact, I know most cultures are that way. One reason why I love Asian culture is that they have a great high respect for their elders. I think that's one thing that we need to pay more attention to, especially in our nation. We do not nearly have the respect that we should for our elders. Matter of fact, we want to get rid of them, don't we? I'm talking about societally. Our society wants to get rid of them. God says you be respectful. You honor them. You love them. You keep them. What about continuing verse 13? Do not kill. That is, do not shed innocent blood. I don't want you to commit adultery. Don't go off and leave your spouse and be unrighteous to them. That's what he's saying. I don't want you to steal. I don't want you to take other people's things. I do not want you to lie, bear false witness against your neighbor. Because if you bear false witness against him in court, what's going to happen to your neighbor? Terrible things are going to happen. And it's your fault because they're innocent. You don't do that. And I don't want you to want, verse 17, other people's things, whether it's their wife, their husband, it's their house, it's their property, their blue Mustang. I don't want you to want any of those things. John knows I had to throw that in there. That's the higher moral law, is it not? From where did we get that? Now, you and I, believing in God's Word, understand that this came from the mind of God. Up until Moses and Mount Sinai, none of these laws had been written down in this particular way. Yet, most of these laws were known about. If not, then God owes Cain an apology, does he not? Then Cain, in taking and shedding the blood of his brother Abel, that would not have been wrong, but it was wrong. And God was right to do with Cain as he did. There are objective moral commands, and we find them in the Scriptures. Most people know that good and evil do exist. Why? It doesn't matter who the individual is or what their world view is. Everyone has an idea of right and wrong. Everyone has an idea of good and evil. And you go up to someone who doesn't believe in God at all. Are you a perfect individual? And the atheist will say, no, I'm not perfect. According to who? If there's no God, then everything you do is right and good. It doesn't matter what you do. But there is a God. And it does matter what one does. And so, why do atheists really desire to be atheists? Why do skeptics really desire to be skeptics? Why do people want to pervert God's Word, even if they believe in God, even if they believe in the Bible? Why do people want to pervert this Word? Because they do not accept the limitations given by this Word. That's why they don't want it. I want to live my life my way. When I see fit to do something, that's how I want it. When I want something, I want it now. And I want it my way. Well, I'm just going to have a Burger King existence. That's what people want. And what do they do in order to get that? Isaiah 5, verse 20. Woe unto you that call good evil and evil good. That's what they do. Everything that God says, you need to stay away from that, they say, oh, but that's good. God says, I want you to be about this. Oh, can't do that. That's evil. That's what people desire. And so those limitations that are put on people, that's why we have crazy ideas out there of how we can get this operation to work where this universe and we exist, and yet there is no God. All of that work, all of that effort, all of that intelligence, all that energy going so that I don't have to believe in God, so I can do whatever I want to do. Because ultimately that's the case. And yet, how hypocritical. Right? Because the same people that don't want God, they want law. They want order. If something were to happen against them, they would be the first ones to take people to court to make sure that their rights are not stepped on. And yet, if there is no God, they have no rights. Because there is this law of morality. Let's look. Let's look at the animals and the animal world. It's always a good thing to look at the animal world. Do you know that the animals have no morals? Go over with me, I'll tell you what. You think to yourself, now why is this animal in the scriptures at all? In Job 39, verse 5 through 8. Here's Mr. Donkey. Did you ever think that you would hear a sermon and we're going to talk about, of all the animals, we're going to talk about Mr. Donkey? I mean, there's some awesome animals in here, right? I mean, you're talking about the eagle, the war horse. We're talking about even the mountain goat, how elusive he is. We can even go over into the behemoth and the leviathan and talk about those awesome animals. No. We're going to talk about Mr. Donkey. Look with me. Now, he's funny, isn't he? He's humorous. It's all right. I do think that God has a sense of humor, by the way. I really do. I just don't want him laughing at me. Right? When God laughs, that's not nice. Verse 5. God asked Job, who sent out the wild donkey free? Who loosed his bands? Verse 6. Whose house I have made the wilderness and the barren land his dwellings. He scorneth the multitude of the city, neither regardeth he the crying of the driver. The range of the mountains is his pasture, and he searcheth after every green thing. You know, we have a term. Now I know it's the mix of a horse and a donkey, but it's still in the same family, right? He's as stubborn as a mule, right? But we don't say that since Mr. Donkey here is so stubborn, he has his own way of doing things, that he's unrighteous, do we? That's just the way he is. And we let him go to his pastures and do whatever he wants to do. Because we're not going to tie him to the cart. We're not going to tie him to the plow, because we know that the work is not going to get done. Why? Because he has no moral obligation. He is an animal. I saw a documentary one time about, it's a little ant bed. I believe Linda, I believe it was out in Texas is where it was. Yeah. And these little ants, they're in their little ant bed. It hadn't rained in a while. And so they're having to range, these little ants, bless their hearts, are having to range further and further from the ant bed to go find water. Well, as the documentary goes then, these little ants are now pretty far. They're like 3 yards from their ant bed. And they come across another ant bed. But those ants are larger than they are. You know what happened? The large ants came and killed every single one of the little ants. Annihilated them. Gone. We should put them on trial. They need to go up before the highest courts in the whole globe, don't they? No, they're not unrighteous, are they? Because ants have no more, there's no moral compass there. That's what ants do. What about the killer whales? When they eat all those seals and sea lions and, oh, but I just saw a seal and a sea lion at SeaWorld down in Orlando. And they're so cute and wonderful. And, well, you get out in the Pacific Ocean, doesn't matter, does it? Get down there and around the Antarctic, and if you're a sea lion or a penguin, you better head the other way, because Mr. Orca is going to get you. And actually the whole pack. But we don't have a problem with that, do we? What about Mr. Komodo dragon, who 10% of his diet are his children? Do we say that Komodo dragons need to be eradicated from the face of the planet because they eat their own offspring? No, we do not. We don't put them on trial because they have no law. Why is it wrong, I put that word wrong, to eliminate, let's say, a species of animal? Let me say this very quickly. Number one, it's not wrong. Number one, it's not wrong. However, let's go to Genesis 1, verse 26. Some people say, oh, it's so evil to... Is the dodo bird still around, by the way? Oh, no. What about those massive dinosaurs? Most dinosaurs, are they around still, by the way? Are they extinct? We find fossils of them, trilobites. So many animals have come and gone. Is it evil when they come and go? No. It's just how it is. Some of those things perhaps humans had something to do with, but most humans had nothing to do with it at all. What about when we do get involved? And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea. So when I take my fishing boat out there, and when I do, I catch fish. That's how that works. I go fishing, I catch fish. See how that works? Yeah. Am I unrighteous to go catch fish? Go catch fish and eat it. I can do that now because my wife's not allergic to fish. My mom was allergic to fish, so I couldn't eat them. But, there you go. No, it's not unrighteous. Why? Because I'm a human being and have dominion over fish. Now, is it in my best interest to kill all the fish in the pond, folks? Or is it in my best interest to make sure that there are more fish in the pond so that the next time I go fishing, I can actually still catch fish? Well, wisdom then says that I better be careful about how I work within my environment. Over the fish of the sea, fowl of the air, over the cattle, and over how much? Does your scripture say all? Over all the earth. There's a little place, it's called Australia. Do you know how much of Australia is desert? It's like over 90% of it's desert. Do you know how it got to be all desert? Because the Aborigines, the original people of Australia, did a little farming technique called slash and burn a long time ago. And now Australia is mostly desert. Only where you have a river, basically an oasis there. Now, are we going to go back to those Aborigines and say, you did evil and wrong because you did slash and burn? No, we're not going to do that. Were they wise in how they did that? Well, I don't know, because, matter of fact, I don't think that they had the technology and ability to understand that what they were doing was destroying their environment. Do you think that they knew that? No, I don't think so. But they were not evil individuals because they did that. Look, man has dominion over all the earth. And it is okay, it really is, if one species, or whatever you want to call it, of butterfly doesn't exist anymore. It really is. It's okay. It really is all right. That's a soapbox. There's a vast difference between man and animal. What is that? Verse 27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Here we go. Male and female created he them. By the way, how many genders are there? Oh, 2. Okay. I just thought I'm throwing that one in for free. There's a difference between all the creatures before Genesis 1:26 and the creatures after Genesis 1:26. The ones before do not have a spirit. They're not created in the image of God. The ones after, man and woman, are created in the image of God. And they are the ones that have dominion over everything, the entire world. Now, is it in our best interest to take care of this planet? I think it is. I think we need to be good stewards of the things that God has given to us. We really need to do that. But we are not animals. If this world came about in a natural way, then we would just be like all these other animals, and whatever we do is acceptable. But we are not animals. We are made in the image of God, and therefore we are held accountable for our actions. Kind of had to look at this and find the best illustration, whatever. Anarchy. There are some people then, maybe they even believe in God, I don't know, but they do not want God at all. They want anarchy, no masters, no law whatsoever. Folks, it doesn't matter. If there's no God, there is no law. And if there's no law, there's no sin. There's no right and wrong. Nothing that man can do then, there's nothing that man could do that would be sinful if there is no law. Luke 18, verse 19. And so we understand that we can do wrong. Therefore, God exists, and He gave us His law. What about all those people that have been jailed for murders? Why, we need to apologize to them. We need to make reparations for those whose lives we have taken because they shed innocent blood. Well, it wasn't innocent blood. They were just doing whatever it was that they felt like. It wasn't wrong. No law, no God. No God and no law. And so we would need to then apologize to them. Why, we need to empty out all of the prisons all over the land because we are holding them unjustly. What about this? If there is no God, we need to stop making laws. We need to revert back to where there's a land of no law. And by the way, would you want to live in that world where there is no law? In Bible class this morning, we were talking about a little yellow line that is a law for us as we go up and down the streets during the day. We hope that that law stays in place. But guess what? If there is no God, that yellow line means nothing. I mean, it already means nothing to a lot of people. Now, don't get me wrong. But to most of us, that yellow line means something. Folks, it's just a line. But it's not just a line, is it? It's a law. And we have to respect it as such. Open with me in your New Testaments. Let's go to Romans chapter 13. Let's read these first three passages here. And after we discuss this, then the sermon will be yours. Romans 13, verses 1 through 3. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers. Now he's talking about government. That's the higher power that Paul is talking about. For there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power, resisteth the ordinance of God, and they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. What is Paul saying here? He's saying, look, God is the one that then came up with government and then gave them the power to rule. Why? So that people don't get unruly. Because when there is no law, there is only chaos. And humanity cannot function in chaos. What law do the lions have? Do they have a law? Do they thrive? Why is that? Because actually they are under law. They are under the law of God that God gave to them specifically. Guess how many lions go outside of their law? Not one. God put a boundary on them and they all stay within it. Because they don't have any choice but to stay in it. What about Mr. Ant? Maybe Mrs. Ant. Is she under law? Not a written law. But she is under law, isn't she? She's under God's law. And He set her boundaries so that she cannot go beyond them. What about you and me? We're different. How are we different? We are different in that physically we have no boundaries. But yet we have law. Who gave that law? The same lawgiver to Mrs. Ant and Mr. Lion. But it's not within us, it's written. And so He exists because we have this idea of right and wrong, this idea of good and evil. Mrs. Ant and Mr. Lion, they don't have that same idea, do they? Where did that idea come from? Did it come from nature? If that's the case, have a lot of ladies eating their children, I guess. I don't know. And a lot of people taking advantage of others. But we don't. Because there is an objective moral law. And since there is, God exists. God gave you this law. Why? So you can thrive on this earth? Yes. But specifically so you can be with Him for eternity. That's why He gave you this law. What does He want you to do? He wants you to read that law, be familiar with it, those commands that He has given to you. But note that the New Testament is a law of liberty. It is a law that when followed will give one life and more abundant life through studying of His Word, believing in Jesus the Christ as the Son of God, repenting of sins, changing one's mind to adhere to the law of God and not one's own made-up law. With the mouth then confessing that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, and being baptized for the remission of sins. When one comes into contact with that blood in baptism, all prior sins washed away. And now one is fit, as one comes up out of that water, to serve the Lord in His kingdom. Have you done that? Have you gone into that watery grave and had all your sins washed away? If you haven't, the water is ready. We can take care of that this very hour. And if you have, and yet you need to come back to Him because you established your own morality instead of going by what He says, come back to Him. If you have a need, why don't you come right now while we stand and while we sing. Out of my bondage, all